Fondation Jean-Jaurès.
Penser pour agir.
We are happy today to welcome Mohan Gopal, who is a good old friend from India. He is a renowned legal academician, I would say, after a background in Harvard University in law. Then he has been legal counsel in the World Bank, and then a long career at the Supreme Court of India. He has been associated with politics in a way when he was Secretary General of Rajiv Ghandi Institute for Contemporary Studies. And now he's living in Kerala, in the south of India, and is practicing law as an advocate in the Supreme Court of India on behalf of marginalized sections of population. So he has a knowledge, in-depth knowledge of Indian society over the years. So we are quite happy to welcome him here in the Fondation Jean-Jaurès. So my first question, Mohan, if I dare, would be regarding the last regional elections which took place in India, and the result has been published last Sunday. Those regional elections have shown a significant progress of the leading BJP and defeat of the Congress in 3 states and the gain of in Telangana. So what is your comment regarding these regional elections which just took place a few weeks ago?
I think, thank you first of all to you, Philippe, and to Thierry for this great opportunity to be here in Paris with you and have this discussion. The regional elections, the state level elections that took place a few days ago has resulted in the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, winning 3 of the 4 elections, all 3 in Hindi-speaking states in the north, and they are important victories. They won. The BJP won the election, but they also clearly had a strong opposition from the Congress Party, but they won the election, and they are very important elections because in size. These states are very significant. Rajasthan has the population of Germany. Madhya Pradesh has the population of Turkey. And Chhattisgarh has the population of Australia.
Yeah.
And so those are the 3 states that BJP won. So they're very large states. And the state that the Congress won in the south has a population of Canada. So this is the big picture. This is certainly indicates and confirms that the opposition in India has not yet found a way to stop the juggernaut of the right wing in India, and with only a few months left for the next parliamentary election, which is going to be very decisive
in May.
In 2024. I think this is a very significant development. It tells us basically that the opposition is in no position to challenge the ruling party in that parliamentary election as of now, and they have very little time to get their act together.
Yes, we understand that these elections have been won by BJP.
Yes,
and it's I would say a long-lasting evolution.
Yes,
BJP has been there for 9 years.
Yes,
and maybe they will win for another mandate.
Yes.
So it will be a very long period. So I think it's something new in the, I would say, historical evolution of India during the long period of rightist, as you say, Hindu nationalistic movement. So, can you explain what has been the trend in the last 2-3 decades, explaining this shift toward rightist movement?
Yes. No, I think this is a very important issue that for nearly 4 decades now,
it's a long time evolution.
The right wing has emerged in a very strong way in India after being relatively subdued in the first 3 decades of independence. In the last 4 to 5 decades, they have really gained in strength.
Yeah.
And the social democratic forces and the left forces have been unable for nearly half a century now to counter the rise of the right wing in India. And we need to therefore reflect very deeply and understand why the right wing is rising and why the social democratic left forces are unable to counter this rise. This also, of course, is set in a larger context of the revival of the right wing in many countries in the world, and the marginalization of social democratic parties in many countries. I once plotted a curve, and the curve is broadly similar. The decline of social democratic parties in many countries follows the same path. So there's something going on, but that doesn't mean that we should assume that it's the same factors that are driving this. So I think we need to, and I'm happy to go a little more deeply into understanding the rise of the right wing and the decline of the left wing, and then what can be done to respond.
Here I will make a remark. I've seen that in the last decade, there is, in India at least, there is no link between economic growth, economic policy, and electoral results.
Yes.
In some cases, for instance, in the time of the Shining India, about 20 years ago, the BJP lost.
Yes.
So there is no link. So certainly the economic situation is one factor, but really we have to understand that there are other factors which are not linked to economic policies or to the welfare state. Something different.
Yes.
But how can you weight those factors, the economic scenes and the so-called identity policy, or in India at least?
So I think it's India is definitely a strong electoral democracy. It is not a social democracy. It is not a representative democracy, but it certainly is an electoral democracy. So it's an incomplete democracy, I would say. It's not an economic democracy either. But so long as we have electoral democracy, the key thing is what is the benefit to common people, to common voters. So in the first 3 decades or so of independence, the main benefit promised to common voters that attracted them was the prospect of their poverty being reduced, extreme poverty being reduced after colonialism through state intervention, through a strong welfare state, through a strong public sector, and through a strong state measures and policies that would give priority to increasing economic, political, and social equality. And these policies were initiated by social democratic parties, to some extent the left parties, but largely the Congress Party. And after the first 3 decades, the people responded positively to that, because the leaders who promised them this alleviation of poverty through a strong welfare state and through socialism had credibility. So
and
they delivered for a small section of the people who were really the poor amongst the privileged castes of India. It delivered for them, and it gave them education, it gave them employment which they did not have before, and their numbers improved, and they have now today formed a significant middle class of maybe a couple of 100 million people. But it did not really deliver for the 80% of the country, the margins of the country. It was very early. It was in a sense unrealistic to think that those kind of top-down policies would bring about a change. And frankly, there was at that time an alternate vision. That alternate vision was articulated by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the father of the Indian Constitution, right?
Yeah.
And a great leader of what was then called the depressed classes of India. His priority was not so much to build a welfare state. His priority was to build representative government, representative democracy. He said the question is not what the policies are, but who makes policies. So he said that the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary must have due and adequate representation of all communities, and in proportion to their population. This would have meant that the privileged castes in India, which are very small in number, maybe 5%, 10%, would have had a very marginal role in government, and the unrepresented communities would have had a large role. But today, that agenda was rejected. Instead, a small oligarchy of dominant castes and communities, whether they are left-wing or right-wing, they decided that they will control the destiny of this newly independent country, and they will formulate top-down policies, whether it is right-wing or left-wing, and they will take the country forward. And as a result, even today, the vast majority of the communities that comprise India have no representation in the key policy-making institutions, which are still dominated by this dominant caste oligarchy. So that vision was set aside, and instead what was promised was that we will deliver public goods and strong public sector and social welfare, and people accepted that. They did not. They did not support the representative democracy option put forward by Dr. Ambedkar, but they supported the social welfare alternative. But after about 3 decades, it was clear that that was not working well. And at that time, globally, there was the fall of the Soviet Union, a move towards globalization, market economies. And when that happened, and we all know that, and we need not get into the details, but the operating a social democracy, delivering public goods through the public sector, tangible goods, not just cash transfers, became financially not viable for states, because the states had to borrow money and they had to cut down their deficit, they had to cut down their budgets and from the market and global markets, and so it became financially not viable. And that also then, when this cut back, reduced the actual benefits being delivered to poor people. And so when that the delivery of benefits to poor people was reduced, naturally their electoral support also reduced, because people are looking at what are we getting from this party other than sort of ideology, and they were not getting anything. So there was a real reduction in it. So there were numbers from 67, after Nehru died in 64, the Congress got, at that time, was reduced to a smaller number than before. And they all realized that, and then we had a period of turbulence in the country leading to the declaration of the emergency. So the Congress itself started to realize that these social democratic left policies were not delivering electoral results. And they started to move right. And they started to go along with economic liberalization and integration and market economy. And their emphasis then shifted from poverty alleviation to creating wealth and growth and development. And that was sold to people initially by Mr. Narasimha Rao when he was Prime Minister of the Congress Party for 5 years, and later by Mr. Manmohan Singh when he was Prime Minister for 10 years. But over this 15-year period, initially common people were attracted by that prospect of wealth will be created for everyone.
The question was to trickle down.
But they realized that there was no trickle down and their condition was not improving. So then they became very frustrated. So that's why India's shining did not work, because there was no credibility by then. Because India was shining only for a few people, not for others. It was still dark for most people. And so the credibility suffered. So at that point of time, the Congress's credibility, both as a party that will deliver public goods through the public sector and through social welfare state, that credibility had gone. They also could not deliver effectively on wealth to common people or improving the condition of common people through the market economy. Plus, the Congress was suddenly saddled with two additional very important political negatives. One was the charge of corruption, and the other was a sense of dynasty controlling the Congress. So they had three things. They had no credible way of delivering anything to common people, and they had also the problem of corruption and dynasty. In this, while this collapse was taking place in Gujarat, as Chief Minister, Mr. Modi started to build credibility in the country. In my view, falsely, that he was delivering, benefits for common people through a market economy approach, which was development or wealth creation or growth. And it was all, in my view, largely propaganda, because up to this day, some 30% of the people of Gujarat are voting against him. Who are the bottom section, who do not get those benefits. If he had actually delivered benefits for them, then he would not have such discontent from the poor of Gujarat. But he sold the idea to the whole country that he had developed Gujarat. Falsely, he sold the idea, and the rest of the country, not being able to verify Gujarat, kind of bought it and he said, "Give me a chance for 5 years. I will develop India." Now it's been 9 years. So they said, okay, let's give him a chance. And so this promise, not for poverty alleviation, but poverty alleviation through wealth creation and growth, was given by the BJP. Now, 9 years later, they found that there's no trickle down. And so there is a lot of resentment in the country. And if you look at the numbers, even of these elections, you'll find that the BJP vote share may be increasing, but the opposition is also, there is a lot of discontentment.
There is a margin between Congress and BJP.
It's very small. It is small.
It's only 2%.
It's very small.
Because it's much more than the seats share.
Yes. And even in 19 compared to 14, the Congress got a slightly higher vote share, and the BJP did not make progress. So they are also plateauing because people are realizing that there's no trickle down. So I think that one lesson from all this is that market economy liberalization does not work for poor people, and Congress has tried it. BJP has tried it, and that's something to keep in mind. We'll come back to. But then the question is, how are they succeeding? How are they still winning elections? Although there is clear economic distress. There was, the demonetization. There was COVID. There was, after which there was tragic mass, migration of workers going back to their homes. So a lot of distress in the country, inflation, price rise, low growth, but still they're winning elections. So
what is the trick?
So the trick there is, I think, we go back 100 years and we go back to the fact that the root of the BJP comes from the RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, a Hindu nationalist movement, along with the Hindu Mahasabha, formed in the early part of the 20th century, with the deliberate intention of ensuring that the so-called upper castes, the dominant caste, will control India and control the destiny of India as India moves forward post-colonialism and post-independence. So their strategy was to create very explicitly, this is their phrase, not mine, but to create a three-part agenda of cultural, religious, and political nationalism. Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan. Hindi represents cultural nationalism. Hindu represents religious nationalism. And Hindustan represents a Hindu state, a theocratic Hindu state. And so this was the agenda they developed in the 1920s. And they've built over 100 years a strong organizational network across the country, control of media, control of education, control of academia, that they have really spread this message that this is the future for India, not a social democracy, not even a democracy, but a theocratic, a theocracy, ideally even having a sort of a monarchy. That is, theoretically they want a monarchy, and certainly with the priesthood in command, like in Iran, the priesthood in command. This is their vision. This is totally opposed to the republic. It is totally opposed to the constitution. It is anti-national, anti-constitutional, anti-republican. But this is their agenda. So this agenda was always simultaneously being spread, available to them as a well-developed ideology with vast literature, vast organizational network. So as the economy failed, they had an instrument which the Congress never had, which is they could rely on a social agenda of Hindu nationalism and cultural nationalism, and the Hindus and the political agenda of a Hindu state. And so then they started to build, to accelerate on that. And everyone has noticed that Mr. Modi himself has moved from talking much of development to talking about religion, and so building the Ram temple, protecting the Hindu culture, changing names of cities from Muslim to Hindu, doing.
It's widely spread. I read that in Uttar Pradesh, for instance, the chief minister is a monk.
Yes, he's a monk. He's a monk.
Religious chief.
Yes, and that state has the population of Pakistan, so it's a very large state. Yes.
And also, I read recently that in Madhya Pradesh, BJP local organizations have been extremely efficient. There were 65,000 booths. In each of them, there was a team. Not the day of the election, but before. Fighting and propagating. So there is a kind of ground organization.
It is not the BJP, it's the RSS. It is the RSS that is there actually.
They were fighting for the BJP. So on the ground, there is a very efficient and numerous militants for the for the party.
There is a very dense network of political organizations, of people devoted to this cause, and so on. Now, my question would be, the BJP is facing a situation in which he's becoming short of solutions to address the core problem, I would say, which is the fact that many people, a large share of the population in India, is in misery, is deprived of any prospects for the future, and so on. So, what you say about cultural nationalism sounds a little bit like if it were, let's say, last available example of bringing false. I'm fine. Bringing false solutions, which the people to which they are proposed, accept because they are not fully aware that it's that these solutions are quite false. Okay, so but how long will that endure, and what can we expect? I mean, for the future, since we cannot accept easily the idea that this move to Hindu cultural nationalism will propose solutions for the country in the coming decades.
No, I agree. I think the economic needs of common people are not met, cannot be met, and that is, I think, the biggest challenge facing this government. But and I believe that they can, in the Indian realities, be met only through a strong social welfare state and a social welfare agenda. But what has happened, unfortunately, is that with that even the social democratic parties and even the left parties have actually themselves started to embrace a market agenda. And so there is no party that is really even prepared to consider moving back towards a social welfare state agenda that will actually deliver benefits to the poorest people, and because there's a strong middle class against that agenda, and they do not want the government resources to be used to be taxes to be raised, or government resources to be used to deliver on that agenda. The idea of government itself has been discredited in the minds of a lot of people. And government is corrupt, government is inefficient, cannot do anything, and so there is a huge need for reforming the government delivery mechanisms to make sure that they deliver for people.
For instance, regarding taxation,
yes,
in India the level of taxation is very low.
Yes, very low
compared to us. Yes. I know that it's about. We are in France and Europe more 45%, yes. And in India it's less than 20%.
Yes.
So there is a lack of resources.
Yes.
So why you say there is a political expedition? Why any government in India can't raise taxation on companies, on individuals?
Yes.
Is it, as we say, middle class is refusing? Middle class and dominant classes are refusing, or is a lack of will, because the money is there, but taxation is very low. So the states, even at the center or in the states, have limited resources.
So
for the welfare state.
Yes. Now that will take us into a different direction, but very briefly, I think there's a much greater emphasis now on using indirect taxes rather than income tax. And that burden falls a lot on the poor people. It is not progressive, right? It's not progressive in nature. GST and so on. So the government is actually having a huge resource crunch, but they are not taking that money from the rich. They're taking from the poor. And the overall, I think the number of taxpayers, for example, is around 80 million in a country of workforce around 500 million, population of 1,500 million, and tax rates are low. But those who are controlling power have a vested interest in keeping their taxes low, so they will not allow. So the issue is not there is there fiscal room is a separate issue. Is there political possibility when the business community and the elite are controlling the political power? They will always keep the income tax low and direct taxation low.
What they are offering is merely a series of hallucinatory satisfactions.
Yes.
So, for how long? The vast majority of the people will be happy with receiving hallucinatory satisfaction. So this is a big question. But what why they're winning elections and why this approach is more viable for them is the BJP is able to do. They have three instruments and they are able to use those three instruments much better than the Congress can. One is that they are able to deliver a far more effective set of policies for the wealthy to become more wealthy.
Because there is no, for example, Sonia Gandhi sitting there to restrain them and say, give something to the poor. There is no, she's, I believe, isolated in the Congress party, and most of the leaders of the Congress party are business people themselves, as you know, and or have vested interest in business. They have no problem with it. But the BJP is entirely supported by the wealthy. And so they are happy to pursue the wealth creation agenda for the benefit of the wealthy without any, so they keep the wealthy happy and the powerful happy.
That's what
Then they're telling the common people that what is in real danger is not your economic survival, but your existential survival. The Muslims have already, the false propaganda, entirely false propaganda is being spread that Muslims have become the majority in India when they're only 15% of the population, 14.2 in the last census. 15% of the population. Christians are only 2.3% of the population in the last census. But there is a feeling that, look, there's a whole world. See, India is isolated. The only, other than Nepal, the only Hindu country. We're surrounded by billions of Muslims and Christians, and they're all trying to convert everyone into their religion. And once they convert, then they will impose their language, culture, religion on us. And so we have to protect ourselves, and this is on our doorstep. Pakistan, and Afghanistan, and they're all right at our doorstep, so there's a real threat. And so now we are fighting for our survival as Hindus. And this is a totally false agenda, but that has been created and very effectively. And so for now, we have to sacrifice. So there are people who have gone on TV, poor people have said, I will go hungry, but I will support Modi to protect our Hindu religion and culture, because this is a time when we have to do that. And
the policy of identity.
So right now, building the Hindu temple has become much more important than to build a college or university, which will give free education to the poor. And so this is being manufactured through media, through academia, through false histories, false historical narratives. And they're told that once we have a proper Hindu Raj here, then your economic situation will go back to the old social order. Everyone will be happy and peaceful. Till the foreigners came here, invaders came here, India was a perfectly happy country, glorious country. We'll go back to that old glory. And that's the way forward, not social welfare and corrupt government officials, stealing from government. That's not the solution. And as long as we don't have an old Vedic Brahminical society, there will never be peace in the country. So now what Mr. Modi and the Mr. Modi, more than the RSS or the BJP has been able to do is he's been very agile in responding to creating new issues of popular issues, of social issues, religious issues, naming somebody, accusing someone, an attack against Pakistan here, a war there, a riot here, whatever. Not that he's creating it, but he uses all these very well in order to create a dominance of the cultural fears rather than of poverty as the main need for survival. So that's one instrument. The second instrument they are able to use, and they are able to use that without any restraint, because they are against secularism. They believe that there must be a theocratic state. They believe that religion is important. They do believe that Hinduism which means Brahmanism, is under threat. So they can say all this with great conviction and passion because they believe that. And third thing that they're doing is, if anyone questions this, they use repression. They go after you, throw you in jail, there's selective prosecution, and if anyone organizes the poor, trade unions to see the poor, even if there's discontent, they have to organize themselves to react, right? You can't react as individuals except maybe as a mob, sporadically, but you can't have any organized resistance. So a civil society, all forms of organized political resistance is systematically being dismantled and destroyed. Democratic discourse is being destroyed. People who speak on behalf of the poor are being silenced, right? So therefore, that instrument also they can use much more effectively than the Congress or any left party. So all these three tools are being used by them to ensure that they get the popular support and no one can come up with a counter narrative. And they are continuing to pursue the policies of market-oriented development, which produces some spectacular successes, like big airports, big roads. So people see all this and say, okay, I may not have a job, but my country is developing. My country is progressing.
It's a pride of being Indian. It's a good move. When Modi recently has been flying the Tejas.
Yes,
just a few days before the election. Very agile.
And also, these fancy trains that can run across a country made in India. That so people feel, I may be poor, but my country is developing. Thanks to it.
So G20.
G20 became
extremely important
and
successful. Even it has been successful by
because what they've done is, they have disconnected individual well-being from development of the country. And you're then putting on a spectacle that the country is developing. But I may be suffering and others may be suffering. And so then I have to sacrifice. So that they can do all this very cleverly, and I think there are very powerful communicators behind all this. But so this is how they're able to move forward. But they're not able to penetrate the South. They're not able to penetrate the South. Why? Because of this triple H agenda, 3H agenda: Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan. Hindu may be acceptable, is acceptable perhaps to people in the South as well, although that's an issue we can talk a little bit about. But certainly Hindi is not acceptable. And so just as people all over the country, you can get them fearful of Muslims ruling them or Christians ruling them. People in the South are fearful of Hindi being imposed on them, and Hindi-speaking state being imposed on them, and they're being subordinate to them. So this Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan agenda is what is actually, there's linguistic nationalism in the South, and separate, distinct cultural nationalism. And the religion approach to religion is also different. So these nuances are making this agenda. Economic growth is not succeeding anywhere, but the other two, the repression is being used everywhere. But the center of it is this religious cultural nationalism that is too North Indian and too Hindi focused to succeed in the South. They have two dilemmas. The BJP has two dilemmas. One is that how long, as Thierry, as you said, how long can they continue, without improving the lives of the
without delivering?
Without delivering. Answer is no one knows. They are pushing forward, and they will use whatever strategies they can, but ultimately they will fail. They will fail. That is their big weakness. They will fail. And the second thing is that if they leave the Brahminical ideology domination and the Hindi domination, then that's essential to their character. Without that, they cannot spread in the east and the south of the country. So this is where I think they have their problems.
Problem that the southern states have a smaller population compared to it's a minority.
Yes. It's a large population, but relatively speaking, if you take the top 10 states of India, that's about 1 billion people. People. Of the 28 states and 8 union territories, you take the top 10 states, it's 1 billion people.
The southern one, Tamil Nadu.
Tamil Nadu is,
Karnataka.
How many people?
Tamil Nadu is the population of France plus Belgium.
Compared to the north. It's a minority.
It is France plus Belgium. But it's about 40% of the.
And there is the threat that in very immediate future, the new census will allow to even further decrease the share of the south and east.
Because ironically, the BJP has its strongest support in the Hindi-speaking heartland, where there's the greatest poverty, least amount of education. That's where they're more successful. And so there is also higher rates of fertility there, and therefore their population has increased more than in the south, where population rates increase fertility rates are lower.
Yeah.
And so when as you correctly said, after the next census, when for the first time since 1971, when the number of seats in parliament are revised, there will be the proportion between north and south will move against the south much more. And that will not be an issue unless they use that to cement this Hindustan ideology. If that happens, there will be a reaction from the south and the east, and that is very dangerous for the unity and the very survival of India. So I think what India is, the real issue for India now is this agenda of Hindustan is what is attacking democracy. It is threatening the unity of the country, and that has to be countered going forward. I think that's the main point.
Yes, now you know Europe, you know USA, you have been working in Washington, and as you said rightly at the beginning, there is a trend, a worldwide trend regarding social democracy. Do you see any parallel between our situation, I mean Europe, America, and the Indian situation? I know we don't have the regional background, but the one in the middle, with the identity politics. Do you think any parallel to be done between what we know here and the Indian situation?
This is, I think, this is the key challenge, and I think the identity politics is what is allowing the right to push out social democrats and left, and how do we deal with it? So far, the left approach has been to say it is wrong. We oppose identity politics, and we will not enter into that. And I think one reason for that is that in India, certainly, I don't know about other countries, but in India, the leadership of the social democratic and left parties are mostly from the social elites. And identity politics is a polarization between social elites and social underclass. And so they don't want to go there, because then they cannot be the leaders of their movement anymore. Because if they are, if there's a demand, as Dr. Ambedkar, articulated nearly a century ago, demand for representation of the unrepresented underclass in power and leadership, then the present leadership of the social democratic left parties will have to vacate to accommodate those who are from diverse, weaker sections. So that's what's blocking them, I think, from addressing that issue. Intellectually also, they're not addressing that issue. So what we need to do, broadly speaking, everywhere, is to understand and engage with identity politics much more deeply and have an ideological response to identity politics. And that the content of that will vary from one country to another.
Yes, of course.
Some of that is happening, for example, in Iran. I've read some Iranian Muslim intellectuals are developing a response to how do we understand Islam, what is Islam, and then fighting the domination of the priesthood. In India also, ultimately behind the BJP is a priesthood. The attempt of a small oligarchy led by a priesthood to maintain their control over the country. So in that sense, what's happening in India is not very dissimilar from what is happening in Iran, that a small priesthood wants to, or a community of priesthoods. No, you don't have it.
We don't have the religious background in
yes.
We have the identity one.
Yes.
And immigration is a big
immigration is a big issue.
Yes. But not the religious background, because we are very secular.
France prides itself very much being for century.
Here it's more race.
We don't have the theocratic views. Is not there. Because
we have that we have religious identity as a problem. We have a mixture. We have caste and religion. They're interrelated. And maybe here also, more than you realize, race and religion may be interrelated. I don't know enough. But here your issue is race. That there is or in the United States, that a dominant set of white people are not prepared to let go of power and democratize and yield power or get alternate visions.
What I say about religion here
have space.
Is not true in the States.
Yes.
Where the
evangelic
churches are extremely powerful, and even in the political arena. For example, they are supporting Trump, definitely. We don't have in Europe, we don't have this phenomenon, but in the US, yes.
But I think that takes us to the question of what is religion and what is identity, and we have to think more deeply. I remember some years ago going in the Paris metro with you at the time when France was banning the hijab. And I asked a question out of curiosity, not anything else, because I saw on the metro a Catholic nun wearing what I saw was a hijab. And I wondered why a Catholic nun's hijab is not banned, but in a public place, but a Muslim hijab is banned. So as I see it, I see that there is even in the secularism, there is always an unconscious sort of bias, because the dominant group's secular values are not in conflict with their religious values. The problem arises when the state's secular values conflict with religious values, which is what is happening in India between Brahmanism and the secular values of the state. They are in conflict. Now, we are all committed to the secular values of the state, but they are directly opposed to the theological values of the dominant community.
The path in France, the path that has been followed since 1905. The separation of the state and the religion. Is that religion is a private matter. It's private. So everybody has all right to practice his or her own creed, or to have no creed at all. Because when I listened to you, I saw that you never mentioned the assumption that someone may also have no creed at all, be an atheist. Of course. But so it's a private matter. It must be protected, but not the state is meant to be neutral. I mean, it's difficult to apply that.
Not in India.
Not in India. Okay, just to
no, in India, that's what the Constitution. What you say is exactly what the Constitution of India says. Our republic believes in the same. In fact, people like me argue, and I'm not a practitioner of any religion, so I very much take the point of view of having no creed. I don't have a creed, but in India also, what you have described is exactly the position of the republic, but that is not the position of those who control power, the communities that control power. See, that conflict is what creates an issue.
It's a new conflict.
It's a new conflict. After independence.
From what you've said, I mean, all the analysis that you've made, I mean, I think that the situation is potentially dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
Very dangerous because playing with that game, that dirty game, of creating distinctions, inequalities between all the humans, leads to
clashes,
civil war,
civil war, all kinds of, and democracy is about precisely avoiding that.
Yes, exactly.
It's not an easy job, but it's absolutely necessary to maintain the whole thing together instead of breaking it apart.
See, this is where I want to come in and say that what I think we all agree on is that we have to understand the roots of nationalism, whether it's race or religion, and we have to understand, what its content is and respond to that. So, the social democratic parties are not able to do that. They don't have the ideology, the experience, the knowledge, the expertise, and that's what I think we should try and develop.
They used to have it, but they have lost it in a way.
But they never
because the world is changing also. For instance, globalization is a major issue, and it destroyed a lot of mechanisms which were in place in some countries.
Yeah, I agree, but the point is we never had, for example, in India, the socialist parties or the left communist parties or the Congress party does not have a tradition of dealing with caste. Or dealing with, other than saying what you're saying, that religion is a private matter, it should not enter into the decision making of the state, which is the right position and the constitutional position. They don't have a view. In fact, gradually the Congress party drifted into the religious field by, in my view, misinterpreting the constitution and says secularism means giving equal treatment to all religions rather than keeping religion out of the state, which is really what the constitution demands. And that then took the Congress also, took the whole nation into the slippery slope of saying, okay, if religion is to enter into state consideration, then the question is whose religion is going to be more powerful and whose is going to be less powerful. Whereas if you keep religion out, then that question doesn't arise. So that's where, the Congress, I think, made a mistake. And once this happened, then naturally the majority says, okay, the Hindu religion is going to be the dominant religion. We will not let it. In fact, in the Constituent Assembly, one prominent Hindu member said this. He said, look, either you keep all religions out, we have no problem with that. But if you're going to take religion into concern, we will not allow Hindu religion to have to compete with other religions. It will be the only religion to dominate this country. So, therefore, the decision taken by Dr. Ambedkar and others was to, exactly as you said, keep religion out as a private matter and not let it come into state decision. But the question is, can it be done or not? So that takes us into the question of, how do we understand race or religious nationalism? And I believe we do not have adequate expertise yet to engage with it very deeply. We must find it. There is a lot of knowledge available in society, but it has to be brought into the thinking, policy making of political parties and converted into strategies. That's not happening. So in Kerala, for example, as I said, I'm doing a lot of work based on the philosophy of Narayana Guru, who was one of India's and one of the world's most interesting philosophers and thinkers, who 11 days after the RSS was established, said in a published interview, there is no religion called Hinduism is not a religion, he said. It is not a religion. So he said explicitly that the big conflicts coming in India are going to be around religion and caste. And so he took the view that, look, religion is a personal matter, he said, not a private matter. He said it's a personal matter. Even if you're whatever religion you belong to, each individual understands a religion differently, distinctly from others. We may have something in common, something different, but it's very distinct. And so each person should study all religions in the world and should take what is good from all religions and construct your own religion. And you can have multiple identities. There is no need to have an exclusive identity. Be open. This is not for state policy, but as individual, consciousness of religion. He advocated this open approach. His main point was that you should never treat another person as an other, otherize, make someone an enemy, an alien, simply because he has a different religion, different caste, different race. Treat it as a difference of opinion. For example, it takes place in your own family, you treat it as a difference of opinion. If your child or your parent has a difference, you don't say he is another race or another religion. You say, I have a difference of opinion with you. So Narayana Guru's basic message is, don't allow religious beliefs or differences of opinions to convert human beings into an other, into an enemy. And always treat them as fellow human beings and have a difference of opinion. Maintain those differences of opinion, but find ways of resolving them or accepting them without allowing yourself to treat someone as an other. So he spoke against otherization. So we are trying now otherization. And secondly, he rejected the very existence of the Hindu religion. That gives us, and he gave detailed intellectual, he was a great scholar of religion, and he has given a lot of information about why he said that. So I think we can use his legacy in Kerala, for example, to counter Hindu nationalism by saying, look, you're talking of a nationalism of a religion that, according to Narayana Guru, does not even exist. So what kind of nationalism is this? So it is only a device. Hindu is only a device for you to inject into local religions Brahmanism. And the religion of the original self-proclaimed Aryans. And this is simply a device to convert us into some other religion, and it's actually an attack on our own real religion, right? So that's basically his approach. So that's just an illustration of how I think we need to counter, similarly race. We know race is a false category. We know there is no such thing as race. But
the very notion of race is questionable.
More than questionable.
Because, according to the French Constitution, for example, which is not the only example, there is no race.
Yes, there's no race. Yeah, exactly.
There are only one race, which is
human. Human. That's what Narayana Guru said. There's only one species, one caste, one race, and that is human.
Human.
Yes, that's it.
So you are building on that.
So I think what we need to do is three things. One is we need to make sure that the leadership of left and social democratic parties come from unrepresented groups. So they have no vested interest in fighting representative democracy, and they will be open to representative democracy, and that they will restore, to the extent financially possible and viable, the importance of a welfare state and put in place policies that will deliver benefits to poor people on the economic side. On the social side, I think they need to engage with and effectively, intellectually counter, using religious understanding or spiritual understanding or philosophical understanding. They need to take apart the religious nationalism and counter it effectively. And thirdly, I think they need to protect civil rights, and they need to ensure that repression, as is happening in India and in some other countries, is not used to destroy the ability of to fight for secularism and to fight for socialism and social welfare state, and for people to organize. Because I still believe that there is a lot of mass support for a welfare state and for socialism and for secularism. It's just that they are not able to organize themselves, to do that. So I think if we do these three things, I think we must, not that we can and should, we must counter this very dangerous, reversal of democracy.
It's a huge program. As you said, it's really needed in those days.
It's very needed in India and for India. But considering the fact that India is has the biggest population on the surface of this planet, and is at the center of the so-called Asia-Pacific region, which doesn't mean anything, but okay, it's a pure...
That's highly significant. What you say for India, is valid for the world. At least for 1.4 billion.
Yes, definitely.
It's valid for... And what takes place, conflicts in India have necessarily fallouts all around. That is why Philippe will agree to this attention. More attention should be dealt to India.
I am convinced of that.
I
have been convinced for years.
Okay. The observatory is supposed to deal with vast, but China necessarily attracts a lot of attention. But in this process, there is an oblivion, which is one of the elephants in the room, and this elephant is India. It should not be subject to oblivion, but also underestimation.
Yes, absolutely. No, I totally agree.
I think we have really covered a lot of space in India and all over. And thank you very much.
Thank you for this opportunity.
For your visit.
Thank you.
So we really appreciate it, and we are going to stay in touch together and in the future.
And I hope that the foundation will consider because we'll all benefit from it, how to counter the identity politics more effectively. Effectively, not just complain about it, but effectively counter it. And with a much broader range of tools, and taking resources such as Narayana Guru that are available all over the world, and using all of that to counter locally, whatever is necessary to be countered.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.